the work office to my home so I can actually use it on my monitor here.
Good. Yeah.
Live streaming isn't available right now. Try again. That's weird. Has been removed by the uploader. That's super weird.
Actually, my Zoom is saying live on custom live streaming service. Oh, and I can see it on the YouTube page.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's certainly showing on YouTube.
Hey, I'm not sure if anyone is actually tuned in or not, but this is Dan and Kirk here to talk about Rurik Stone and Blade. Looks like we might be live on Facebook as well. If anyone is able to, there we go. Matt says it's on. Dan says, or Stan says, I see you. Hey, Stan, sorry about your tooth. Unfortunate timing. Hi, Manny. All right. Well, happy Friday. Happy to chat with anyone who wants to submit questions. We had a couple questions submitted ahead of time. Otherwise, we'll just kind of run with it here. So for those who are unfamiliar with myself, I am the publisher of Rurik, and I run PieceKeeper Games along with my wife, Emily. She's upstairs with her kids right now. Dan, who's joining us here, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah, I'm Dan Cunningham. I'm kind of a friend to Kirk, but I'm also fairly active locally in the game design, game publishing, as well as some engineering aspects of the game design and publishing. So I've helped out Kirk with a couple of your games now, both behind the scenes as well as some of the physical parts that you actually see with the products. But I've also worked with a couple other publishers as well. Kind of a lot of times it's mostly a design or production consultant. So I do aspects of the design or production, help out where needed. I have published my own things as well, but it's mostly been that with 3 kids here at home. So that's kind of that time makes that happen.
And so the first project we worked together formally on was Gearworks, and you made the tray for that.
That's right. Yeah. So Gearworks was one of the first ones we worked together on. I think we both live in Madison, and so we kind of had known each other from conventions and things before that. But I'm an engineer by trade, a design engineer, mechanical, and so I had done my own published work back in 2016. It was called Loon Architects, but with that came a fancy vacuum formed tray. So I got experience doing that. So then when Kirk mentioned he wanted a tray for Gearworks, I said, well, yeah, that's something I can do, and I've done it before. And so we worked together on that to get that made. That then kind of evolved into other things, which culminated later in Rurik, the base game. All the tray designs for that were my design from that. So, and then that's then continued on into potentially more help with Rurik, Stone and Blade.
Yeah, we've been really thankful for your help. Dan is a master of lots of different things. So I don't think you mentioned either. You've also helped with making some of the original prototypes for Rurik.
That's true, yeah. So part of what I like to do is craft, and so often that involves helping people make prototypes. So I've got access to 3D printers, laser cutters. I have the ability to do large format printing. So I know with original Rurik, I did some prototypes, and I think all the prototypes you sent for Stone and Blade, the boxes were mine, but you did most of the other stuff for Rurik. I've worked with other companies as well to do prototypes, but it's mostly just a fun thing I like to do to pass the time and with some of my friends that need help with prototypes.
For sure. So the funny thing was you got the Glowforge, I think, right before we made some pieces for the first Rurik game. And I remember we were doing that at your work lab there, and the fans were blowing so quickly that it blew up some of the pieces and then it recut them a second time.
Yes. If I remember, actually, I think we prototyped some of the Gearworks little shapes.
Oh, we did too. You're right.
The Glowforge. Yeah, it's handy to have a laser cutter that you can make mistakes with, and then got to do it again.
Yeah, I have my little rinky-dink 3D printer hiding back there, but you have access to more tools than I do. So
Yeah,
very
and
handy.
actually in the latest, I've gotten to the point now that some of the bigger projects with making prototypes, I send the 3D prints out. I don't even do them here. You know, especially when you want really high quality miniatures, for instance. My also rinky-dink 3D printer is not good at doing those, but yeah, there are services online that don't end up being too expensive, so it's worth it most of the time.
Which one do you use? I use 3D Hubs typically.
I used 3D Hubs mostly, but then I actually got linked to, oh no, I don't remember the name of it. I'll look it up while we continue to talk. But yeah, it's very, very similar to 3D Hubs.
I used 3D Hubs most recently, even for the Rurik expansion prototypes of the large minis, which I'll try to grab them here.
Mm-hmm.
May as well show these off. The coloring is a little different than, of course, what they'll be in the final game, but they still show decently well. Of course, I probably...
Cloudcraft was a different service, just like 3D
Cloudcraft.
Hubs.
Well, the one I was reaching for is actually in a different room, so it'll be more, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually on my shelf. This is my office, which doubles, of course, for my day job office and PieceKeeper Games office and just storage. All right, here's one of them. Here is Glib.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those end up looking really nice. Ooh.
The resolution is not zooming in. It doesn't do face recognition or anything for him, but I think it gives anyone watching a good example of what it'll look like. Same sculptor who did the first minis too, so same sculptor, same manufacturer. That should mean that the detail carries through in a similar fashion to produce more high quality miniatures.
Oh yeah, they look pretty great.
And then Theophana. And then for Sviatoslav, he's in another box I'd have to grab, but if I might do that as the stream goes on here.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing we haven't really showed off a whole bunch yet on the Rurik campaign is plastic trays. And some people may have been wondering what we were doing for trays, if anything. And we were actually going to reveal one of the trays a lot sooner in the campaign. But based on how the conversation was going about could the expansion fit in the base game box and this, that, or the other, I recognize there are some people that won't want to retain this box for their core storage of the game. So they might have thought that getting stretch goals that were for a tray they weren't going to use very often would be superfluous or maybe not as valuable to them. So instead we flipped the script where we put all the other stretch goals in front of it so that they would see the value that they were getting and everyone was getting, and then maybe be more of a cherry on the top at the end. Ultimately, we believe that all the stretch goals we put into play would have the opportunity to be unlocked based on what our projections were. And we'll see here in the next few days, but I think they're within reach for us. So maybe we can talk a little bit about, or maybe I can, should you think I should share my screen, or you want to share your screen with that, the base tray we've teased a little bit?
Well, go ahead and you share and I can fill in as needed.
All right, let me pull up here. So one thing is there's a, similar to the Rurik base game, we're planning to put a tray in this one that lets you hold the miniatures as well as sleeve cards and some other pieces. These things are primarily of importance for when you first ship the game. If you don't put something like this in the game box, what ends up happening is it's not as pretty of a arrival where the pieces can shift around more, and there is chance for damage to the miniatures. There are other ways you can package up the nice miniatures so that they don't get damaged, but then things like sleeve cards, etc., don't have good longevity in the box. I mean, they'd stay in their shrink wrap when you ship them and that'd be fine. But if we do have the opportunity to make another campaign down the road, these trays would integrate perfectly in a theoretical big box that some people have asked about. Now, that is a loaded topic there, and we're not promising anything, but we are designing future-proof so that if and when that does become an option on a theoretical fifth player expansion, then these trays can go on top of the existing trays inside of a big box, and then they will be reusable. So anyone who is thinking of maybe not using the expansion box for this expansion, well, if you're going to put the content in the base game, I think you're going to want to save that other box with the trays for the future, even if it's in a closet somewhere. Let's see.
I'm happy to screen share, but it's actually saying the host has disabled my screen sharing.
I can enable for you. For some reason, Or maybe when I'm custom streaming, it doesn't allow me to do that real time. Allow. Can you re-email that to me? For some reason, I'm looking at my emails and I see the one for something else that I'm not quite going to share yet.
Right, and so that's why I don't know if I actually rendered the just the base one yet. So that's why I wanted to share. Got it here.
Matt says he'd love to be able to store all buildings in his player tray. Well, that is something we might talk about here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull this up here. Happy Friday, by the way, for those who are watching. Not sure if we have many people that are in a time zone other than Eastern or Central or something that's around the lunch hour, but thank you for those who are taking some of your Friday night. If you are maybe not in the US, in Europe, I'm not sure if we have anyone. Looked like David Bliss liked it, but I don't know if he's actually watching or just stopping by to say hi, for example. All right, one moment here. Did you say you resent that to me?
I actually don't have that render.
Oh, you don't have the render?
No, I can make one really quick.
Well, we'll just talk about it here then.
Okay.
And by the way, for those who watched earlier streams of me, in case you were curious, I actually was missing a tooth in previous streams, and I just got it final tooth put back into my mouth for the first time in 10 months. I've had no tooth right here. So in case you were wondering if your eyes were playing tricks on you, I do have a tooth here now, but I didn't have a tooth there previously. All right, so one backer had asked about, can the AI be used as an additional opponent in a 2 or 3 player game? And that's a great question. We have had someone ask about that previously. By design, the AI is playing on a 2-player board. So you have all the green spaces, if you're familiar with the game, are for 2 players, and the yellow spaces, there's 3 of them, get added for a 3rd-person game, and the brown or red spaces get added for a 4-player game. And so the solo AI plays with this rebellion deck that has a location order that tells if it had to choose between multiple regions, which regions does it take actions in. It plays on all the green regions. So if you were to play with the AI in a 3-person game, it would not ever target the regions that are in yellow, which would give you a strategic advantage. No, the AI would never move there, it would never attack there, et cetera, et cetera. But the question was, can they be used as an additional opponent in a 2-player game? Well, I assume you meant playing a 3-person game, or a 4-person game, but without doing a lot of modifications on your own, it wouldn't quite work. You probably could find a way to account for that, but it was more headspace than we wanted to account for. And there's some games do that where you have like multiple AIs that you can play in a multiplayer game, but that was not the direction we went with Rurik. So for those that are watching, feel free to submit any questions on Facebook or YouTube, watching on both of those. The campaign's doing great, picked up steam in the last day or so. We had a fortuitous timing of a few different emails that went out across a few different subscription lists, both the Board Game Geek, our friend Chandler at CrowdOx sent out an email to their list featuring Rurik yesterday, and then we had a giveaway promotion through the Board Game Revolution community, and they sent out an email yesterday. So those 3 emails help provide some more eyes on the campaign.
And I think because of backers, now the number 1 and number 2 images on BGG are both the Rurik images. And so that's probably pulled some backers in too.
That has, yeah. We unlocked that social stretch goal to unlock the additional intrigue card, which is actually a really fun intrigue card. For those that have not seen it yet, it allows players to take 2 scheme cards, look at them, and then choose which one the player to their side takes. So you're picking the poison that someone else is probably going to serve up to you, but it's a cool little twist to the intrigues. Mostly the intrigue cards in the base game have to do with the strategy board. They make you pay extra coins if you were to take an action in a certain column. Some of them deal with spawning troops on the board, but some of these we went a different direction with them in the Stone and Blade intrigue cards.
I did email you that render.
Oh, thank you. I'll pull it up here. Let's see here. Just making sure I didn't miss a notice from someone. Feel free to submit any questions. The other game that Dan has talked about helping with is actually Stan, the designer's, I don't know if you'd truly call it the next design, but it's another design of his that's going to be coming to Kickstarter in October by a friend of ours, Yoma, who has also worked with Dan on projects, has also worked with Stan on projects. Yoma's company, I'm blanking on their exact name, but the game is called Endless Winter, the Paleo Americans, and it's something that has received a lot of hype already, and we're really excited to see how that campaign does. So Dan has also worked with that campaign and those trays, or the, maybe you'd call them the, I don't know if they're final or not, but the trays have been displayed publicly.
And the little early prototypes of it, yeah, it's Fantasia Games.
That's right, Fantasia.
Yeah, and that would actually just about a week and a half ago, I finished making 6 very elaborate prototypes and sent those around. So it's been fun because as the publisher is kind of teasing these images, they're of like my table. It's like, I set that up. I took that picture. So that's fun to see those up there.
Did you put any Easter eggs on the table?
I didn't. There was one image actually that was of my shelf, my game shelf with the box for, kind of sneaking out. And I actually put my published game kind of like hiding around it. I mean, there's only like 1,000 copies out there. Unfortunately, in the final image that they ended up sending around, you couldn't see it at all. But I know it's there. So it's a little Easter egg for me.
They decided.
Well, I took a couple pictures, and then the one that they chose as the best was the one that you really couldn't see my game in. But whatever.
Sure.
Theoretically an Easter egg, but
yeah, I don't blame you on that though. My email must be slow. It's not coming through yet.
If you enable screen sharing,
I think I have to actually end the stream to be able to do that, and then that would end everything on YouTube and Facebook. So I don't want to do that. For those of you who happen to see earlier a notification that I went live on YouTube or went live on Facebook, my apologies. I've never used Restream before, and it doesn't give you the option to have a draft to stream on YouTube where you can say go live, like I've done that before. When I just publish straight to YouTube or straight to Facebook, I think just with straight to YouTube, you have basically a preview window and you can say go live, and Restream says, nope, you don't get to see that. And once you start a live stream, you have to end it if you want to. You can't just restart it later. So I sent out a false alarm a couple of times, so apologize if you jumped on early with that. I'm not sure what's up with my email here, but so Dan also did some early playtesting of Rurik.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, what was the earliest prototype you played of the base game?
I don't remember what that earliest would have been.
Did you play it when it had the fantasy art cover on it?
I played it at a it was with Stan. I was at a proto spiel in may have been Milwaukee or Madison. I don't remember.
Was Stan running the demo or was I running it?
I think Stan was running the demo. So this may have even before you picked it up. I don't know. But it's been a long time coming, the original Rurik, and I've kind of enjoyed all the steps along the way as it's come. But I mean, I remember playtesting the expansion with you and Stan just at a local game store just out of the blue, and we played the 3-player and explored some of the things. Those were still hand printed little pieces of paper, and it was fun.
Yeah, the phases that a game goes through with prototyping is pretty crazy. Okay, I realized you sent it to my Gmail, not my PieceKeeper games email. Apologies.
Whoops.
So here's my screen. Can you see it, Dan?
Yeah, very low resolution. Man.
That's something though. So here's a mock-up of what the tray will be that will hold tarot cards, mini cards, sleeved, as well as a couple other wells for some of the extra wood pieces that are not wood pieces, the cardboard chits that are within the expansion, and then all 3 of the miniatures. So this will protect them and nest them nicely. These will be labeled again with which number miniature goes where. So we're pretty excited about that. It'll have its own lid, and this would, because the boxes are, this box height is the same as the other box's width, it'll work pretty well for a theoretical big box to build up off the top of it. So we're future proofing, again, not promising anything if you missed out on the earlier part of it, but if it does come to a big box down the road, we would definitely want these trays to be reusable. We don't want to have to remake trays and make you throw away something you already paid for. That just feels a little bit wasteful and makes you have to spend something that we don't think you have to.
Right.
Let me go and stop my screen share there. So we're getting close to the final weekend here, and not gonna lie, kind of excited for the campaign to reach the later parts of it. It is something that is always on your mind when you go to bed at night when a campaign is running. And as much as I love running a Kickstarter campaign, I do sometimes wonder if I should cut out one of the middle weeks. And I've told myself previously I was going to do that, but I didn't do it this time around. And I think that maybe that would have been the perfect length. And if I did, because the middle weeks for pretty much every campaign across the board are slow, and
Yeah.
it is what it is. I mean, so there's notifications when a campaign launches and when it ends, and in the middle, sure, you're unlocking things, but there isn't as much time sensitivity there. So their attention is elsewhere. So you get this big bell curve. And sometimes other creators have moved to more of a really aggressive model where they do like 10 or 11 days. I think somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks is probably a good length. Anything shorter than that, you start missing out on media coverage for this, that, or the other.
Yeah. Yeah, part of what I help friends with is I've got a pretty robust Kickstarter predictor model that after a single day, I can get a pretty good number. And then after a couple days, it's been very accurate. And that helps the different content creators and publishers figure out how to distribute stretch goals and what's an expectation.
Sure.
And Rurik's been following my curve pretty nicely until yesterday. It actually jumped up. It's significantly higher than my expectation. So that's good news. So I think, like you mentioned before, some coordination of some email blasts and some different things probably helped push yesterday up. But I think we're starting that second half of the bell curve a little bit early, which will increase the numbers on all of it. So
for sure. Yeah, it's really helpful to have the insight you provide. Good morning, Randy. Thanks for joining, or at least just stopping by briefly. Randy was one of the playtesters for the expansion, and really appreciated having his help. Dan, I actually think you were one of the first players to playtest the Stone and Blade expansion with both Stan and I. We played at I'm Board and Sun Prairie one day, and it was funny to have the finished base game out with the nice playmat, and then we had just some pieces of paper to modify this, that, or the other. And a couple people came by. This is pre-COVID. This is like, I don't even remember. Was it last November or something?
Last fall.
And October or something. And people came by and they could tell that the game was finished. And then they saw a couple pieces of paper and they're like, wait, what's that? We're starting to play just an expansion. Always kind of funny to see. This was actually a much easier prototype sell this time around. So in the past, when you make a game from scratch, as you're familiar with, the first prototypes being rough, sometimes have a harder time getting people that want to play the prototype. This time, having a finished game and showing off the pieces, then you got at least a lot of eye candy and then just some sore spots. So those who play tested for Stone and Blade regularly got to deal with me being maybe I took the quick route, let's just call it that way, where I did black and white printing for most everything, and mostly did black and white paper, and if I needed to, I taped it to something or stuck it within a card sleeve. But it did save a lot of time for prototyping, but we had enough good looking things that I didn't need to do so many pretty prototypes.
Yeah, and post-COVID, it's tough to get people to prototype. So you need something a little bit nicer looking. And I think you had that advantage of using the nice Rurik components.
Right. Randy, if you're drooling over getting the playmat, yes, we will have more in stock. We've been sold out of those for 10 months now. So we're excited to get some more. The minimum order quantity for those playmats is significant that we couldn't just go in and order those without having some sense of how many to order. You can, with some playmats, even in the US, get a smaller batch, but this is edge stitching, and maybe some of the US ones do that, but in the past when I barked up that tree, they weren't doing edge stitching in the US, so we didn't really have a good option to get any less than what our manufacturer could produce. But let's see. Thanks for your comment there. Most excited pending Kickstarter. We'll appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Dan, I don't remember what modules you initially saw. Did you play anything related to the capture mechanic when we were first playtesting, or was that added after you did the playtesting?
I think that may have been added after. It's been a year now, and I don't really remember. I think we may have playtested stables. Maybe it wasn't. Yeah, it may have been Stables. We didn't have Tavern. We didn't play test that. It's pre that. I don't remember.
Got it. Well, the reason I mentioned that because there is the next upcoming stretch goal is for changing some of the artwork out for the dungeons, and I'll show this here. This of course just a prototype thinner, not the thick cardstock that the real game will be, but you probably can't see a whole lot there in this camera, but there are some rats and water in this, and this is some of like the fun little details that are in the artwork. So what we're doing is each of the other players' dungeons will have some slight twists to them. So similar to the base game, we had the different household mats that had different artwork. There was one of the later stretch goals where what we did is we changed out the artwork on the top portion of the household mats to show off a little different personality each player's board, but it didn't change the entire artwork. It was just the artwork for the very top middle. So we're doing something similar here with the dungeons to just give a little bit something unique that all the players can have on their board and their board only. And this turned out really well for the base game, which was fun. We had, if you're not familiar with the base game, so we initially just had this one at the top middle, and it shows a nice little scene that represents where your character lived, and then we also got to have these other images as well. This is a personal favorite. I actually got a print of this and put it on our bedroom wall. It worked out well. I didn't know if Emily would want a game art in our bedroom, but we actually had some sunflower images she wanted to put in our bedroom, which have a similar color scheme. So it actually worked out perfect. And there's nothing on it that says this is a board game. It's just, it's a nice, it looks like a classic illustration. So that's a fun piece of artwork. It's actually,
and I think you use that as a Zoom background sometimes too.
I do sometimes. So that's what we'll do with the dungeons, and I think there'll be some fun little details that are hidden in your dungeons there. Now, ultimately, they're in the same style of dungeon, and there's a lot of dark artwork, so it's not going to be as vibrant of a change as you saw in some of the sky changes there, because at the end of the day, if you're in a dungeon, you don't have a whole lot of light in there. My volume dropped. Gerald, Randy, can you all hear me now?
It's still a little quieter than it was, but not sure exactly why.
It may have had to do something with me turning around and grabbing something out of a box. How is it now?
It's a little louder.
A little louder. I'll just try talking louder to compensate for it. How is that now? Still low. Well, I'm not sure what happened there. I turned around and something happened. I'll just try talking louder. Now good. Okay, I'll just talk louder here, and if it's too loud, I apologize. Let me know. Matt says he might break down and get a playmat even though he only plays 2-player. Well, if you play solo mode, it actually does work decently well to have the playmat because you have extra spaces that you can put everything for the AI player on the board. If you're just playing on the game board with solo mode, you still have to put other things that the AI player has to the side of the board. But if you're playing solo just on the playmat, you can actually use the regions to hold all the pieces for him. Bit low. If wife would stop vacuuming, well, at least she's helping you out though. You don't have to do that then. All right. Thanks, Randy. So Dan, remind me, are you actively working on any designs of your own, or are you just supporting other publishers at this point?
At this point, I'm just supporting other publishers. I've worked as a developer on a couple things now too. I worked with Keith Mateka, Thunderworks Games. We've got a game coming out to Kickstarter. It'll be sometime 2021. I'm not sure. Called Amusement or Theme Parks, and used to be called Amusement Parks. But Theme Parks was a game that was by a first-time designer that Keith picked up and wanted some development work on. So I tackled that, and that was my first kind of big development job. And I think that went really well. So I got to flex some design muscles there. At the same time, it's not my own work, obviously. So it's lost a little bit of that creativity of the initial brainstorming, initial inspiration. But it's a lot of that detail, like fine tuning of things, adding an additional factor here or there, which is important kind of in any playtesting. But even before playtesting, you've got the developers who are usually going through and making a lot of those adjustments. So at least I get to flex some design muscles there without having to go through my own entire design and publishing eventually either.
Sometimes I think that development is actually preferable to doing design work too, is that you can see more of an end goal. And at least for me, it's nice to know that I can see the end of the tunnel. Whereas in design, sometimes the tunnel can feel really, really far to get
That's
to
true.
the end.
I mean, you've seen both sides now. I mean, you did Flag
Yes.
Dash and then Gearworks, both from the base ground all the way to publishing. And here with Rurik, you started with an existing design, and I'd say you did do some development. I mean, it's nice. Stan's been great and in contact, unfortunately only an hour and a half away from us. So
Yes.
like it's easy enough to interact with him. But still development is an important stage it's kind of a blend of design, but you're right. It's got that end goal in mind. It's a little easier to kind of grasp when things work or don't. Whereas if you're starting from scratch, sometimes you're like, well, I think this change will be for the better, but I'm not sure. And it's going to take me months and months to figure out if it was for the better. So I think it's a personality a lot of times of like, do you really like that big open space and the creative ability to go wherever you want? Or do you like a focus where you've got a goal in mind and you're going to head that direction? Both are still design exercises. It's just sometimes some people prefer one or the other.
For sure. And I think one of the bigger ways you can look at it is a game design. You have an open sandbox with no boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
When you get to do development, you often have the boundaries of the the boundaries of the sandbox confined for you. And that might simply be along the lines of the publisher is going to put it within a certain game universe, or it might be within a certain box size or a certain audience or demographic you're targeting. So then you have all these things where you realize there's truly things you're just not going to bark up. So for example, we're not putting Cthulhu within Rurik, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as interesting as that would be, I'm kind of being ridiculous there, but when you're doing a game design, well, if you take a certain thematic turn, then all of a sudden there's all sorts of unique hooks you could add to the game.
Right. I actually, the more I'm thinking about it, a game designer is, I think, an artist first. They are someone who's got a blank page in front of them and they're building something from the ground up. Whereas a developer is still somewhat of an artist, but they're also like an engineer. So my day job is engineering, where I am given problems to solve, whether they're mechanical problems or problems that the consumer wants something. How are you going to solve that? You've got some boundaries set up, and now you're trying to come up with a solution that fits within those boundaries. The developer to me is more engineering side of things, whereas the designer is more the artist. Now there's a lot of crossover there, and obviously the developer still has some freedom to expand or explore like an artist would, and the designer often is going through the engineering practices of, especially if that designer also has been working close with a publisher, they might have an idea of, well, this game is going to be too expensive, so I've got to bring the component cost down, even really early in the process.
Right.
So there's a lot of overlap between those, but I think I hadn't really thought about that until today, that it's the engineer versus the artist.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Jumped a couple comments here. So Matt had said he hopes for an updated rule sheet and player aids if he tries solo. Yes, so the updated solo rules and player aids will be in the expansion, which will make that easier. Yeah, Matt, Kemet did try to put Cthulhu into Egypt. That wasn't received very well by players, though. All right. Hey, Tim, thanks for joining the stream. Appreciate all your help playtesting as well. And let's see, talking about, Gerald, at some point you have to just polish the design and put a bow on it. And that ultimately was one thing we had to do with this Rurik expansion, is we could have kept playtesting it more and doing this, that, or the other, but we were at a pretty good spot and realized it was time to get a game in people's hands sooner than later. So we went forward with that.
In my day job industry of engineering, there is an expression, just kill the engineer, because engineers love to kind of tweak and make things a little bit better, but often just kill the engineer. It's done. It's good enough. It's 99.9% there. That last 0.1%, don't spend weeks and weeks and weeks trying to get that.
Yeah, I'm inherently, that is me, that I'm a perfectionist and a bit OCD when it comes to all the details. I'm at the point where I can actually see a pixel off by one or on a screen, even on a 4K screens, and people will sometimes say that's kind of ridiculous, but that attention to detail can help with game publishing because you can catch little things that are going to be problematic. But at the end of the day, you can also just go crazy with that type of detail.
Yeah. That's why you do card art and layout in a software that can do that InDesign or things like that. Doing it all in Photoshop to me is a recipe for having something off by a pixel or two.
Well, they did implement features in the 2018 version that really improved it where you can snap it across other objects. Whereas when I made our first games, we were on the 2015, 2016, 2017 versions that you couldn't do that. And then when they introduced that feature in 2018, man, I was just so happy. That was the best feature ever added to it. For some reason, and I'm just not familiar with restreaming using the restream.io, I can only look at a few comments at a time that have come through. So I have to pay closer attention to respond to things in real time on the Facebook page, or maybe I can find a way to dig back through them. It only shows me the latest 5. So there was, I think, something else, maybe Gerald. Oh, Gerald, you talked about the role player playmat. Keith's a good friend too in the Madison area, and his playmat, that's a good functional playmat. And as far as size goes though, that's a great playmat, but that playmat is maybe a third the size of the Rurik playmat, which is just kind of funny to think about how large it is. Let me try to pull this up here. See if I can get back to any other. There may not have been a question. I just want to make sure I didn't miss something here. All right. Oh, there we go. Found it here. All right. Was able to scroll back a little more. Any looking into the possibility of getting the game computerized? Great question. There's actually 3 ways you can play Rurik Online. Now, it's not, maybe you'd say it's not a true app or dedicated program to it, but there is a Tabletopia version that Dan actually made all of it, both for the base game and the expansion. So that's free to play, web-based, unless you have Steam and you can get the Tabletopia program, which I only learned about that last week, that there's a Tabletopia program within Steam, which makes it play more similar with greater stability to Tabletop Simulator, which if you have Tabletop Simulator, which is usually about $20, you can play the mod on there. And both the Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator have the expansion in there. And then also there is board game play, which is awesome. It's more like a board game arena, if you're familiar with that, where it's fully automated with the rules. It won't let you do things that are illegal, whereas Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia basically are more of like sandbox platforms that have some enforcement of where you can put things, but they don't tell you what you can and can't do. Whereas in websites like Board Game Arena or this board game play, you can actually poke around only where you're allowed to, and it'll tell you your turn. But the downside for some people to board game play is that it's fully asynchronous. However, you can create private games and just invite your friends, and you can play the asynchronous game in real time, and it works really well. Have you ever played any of the implementations besides the Tabletopia one, Dan, for Rurik?
I've only done the Tabletopia one.
Let me go ahead and show what it looks like for board game play for those that don't do that. And I'm saying this in part because the guy who created this Keon is from Ukraine, and he just offered to do it a year ago. He's a developer. He made this website on his own, and he only has a few games that are on there, but it's a really awesome site, and he should get more attention for what he's done on here than what currently has happened. There's some good games on there for what's on there. So of course there's Rurik, but there's also Manhattan Project Energy Empire, which is a really solid game. And unfortunately, the publisher had tragically passed away in his sleep last year. So this is board game play. And then there's also Montana, which there was a US implementation of this done by our friends over at Big Kid Games, but this was initially done by White Goblin Games. I'm not familiar with this Urbino game, but actually, let's just show how this works, Dan. I'll make a 2-player game here. We can just kind of walk through it. Is that all right?
Yeah.
So if I click Start Playing Now, so this is a free-to-play website, and this is an awesome. So there's a game that's seeding right now for 4 players. Mountain Pony, you're welcome. We were glad to provide ways for people to play it. For those who don't know, I don't make board games for a living. So some companies really try to monetize everything, but ultimately, I just want people to be able to enjoy playing this game. So you could join this game, or you could create one, which I'll go ahead and create one here. And I'm going to just make a 2-player for Dan and I. And let's see, we'll just do leaders will be randomly dealt, and we'll play with, we'll just keep it simple. We won't play with any of the other options. We'll make it a private game. I can create this, and then now I have this link. Should I send it to you in the chat here, Dan?
I would.
Let me send it to you in the chat here.
Actually, just typing it in really quick. See if that works.
Of course, someone in the chat's going to beat you to it, and they're going to join it first.
Oh, yeah.
That would be fun.
I probably will, because I have to sign up for it first.
Kirk, is it a coincidence that Madison seems to be a pretty good hotbed of designers? I do think that success begets success. So if you see other people that are doing cool things in your neighborhood, and this is true for everything. So I mean, you talk about keeping up with the Joneses. You look at your neighbor who builds a cool swing set for their kids, and then all of a sudden you're like, I could do that. And it inspires people to do things that maybe they didn't think that they had in them. And the same thing is true of artists. And so once you just collaborate or see what other people are doing, it does seem to create more people doing the same type of thing. And it does also help to have local help for playtesting. A lot of people in the area are very willing to help lend hand with playtesting and production suggestions, marketing ideas, things of that nature. There's quite a few publishers within the Madison area. So Dan has made a game on Kickstarter of his own. I've made several. Keith's made several. Seth Van Orden is the creator of Nabu Games. They actually have a Kickstarter right now live for the Reckoners expansion. Matt Kwok made a game, the primary, a few years ago.
Yeah.
There's a couple people that are just designers, not publishers. There's Brett, who has made Dual Powers that Keith actually published. There's Kane Klenko, who's made a lot of really famous games, including Fuse and Flip Ships. And there's more too in the Madison area. So Ed Marriott, who made Scoville, is also in Madison. So we're blessed to have quite a few people that have made games in the area.
Yeah.
Stan asks, where did the idea for the Rurik player tray shape with the hidden compartment come from? You're talking about these trays. So if you're not familiar with these, a lot of times we get customer service requests, which is, I got to say, funny to me, because they're the best customer service requests, because someone is crushed that they're missing all their pieces for a given type of a color. And they're like, I can't play this game. And I love it because sometimes people are actually missing something and I have to mail it to them and they have to wait several days before they can play it. And if they don't, whoops, you can see all the things right now.
It's all right.
That's to be for everyone. If you don't mail it to them right away, they can't play for a few days. But this one actually, the trays are just hiding some player pieces below. So usually I just send them a smiley face and say, shake the tray and you'll find the pieces. But I mean, I give more specific instructions, but that's basically the gist of them. Do you want to talk about that genesis?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as an engineer, I'm always trying to minimize cost to things and still having elegant solutions. And I've always wanted a tray lid to be more functional than just a lid. And so I went into it thinking, well, what if this lid was also its own tray? We even explored an idea that there was a lid for the lid. We ended up not using that idea. It was kind of unnecessary. And originally, I was thinking that lid, that was also a tray, would be clear, and so that you'd be able to see through it. It turns out for technical standpoints, it was a lot better to do it in that same opaque material. And that way it gives a little bit of a surprise, but it just came down to, I want a functional tray lid that does more than just appeases the people that want to store their games on the sides, which I do appreciate because I store most of my games on the sides as well. So.
Actually, and for those who are watching at the beginning, my Rurik box in the background was up on its side, and I've taken pieces out since the live stream started, and all the pieces stayed in their places and nothing has fallen out. So from top to bottom, Dan has done a great job on making sure that everything stays where it's supposed to be in the game box. And I think many of you who are watching are familiar with the base game, so I'm not showing you anything that you don't know already. But everything traps together really nicely. I pulled off the claim board, which holds all the cards in place. So that's not going to be something you'll see at the moment, but all the miniatures and everything in there, nothing is out of place. And it was sitting up on its side for quite some time and not shook up, but it was definitely jostled around and everything stayed where it was supposed to be. All right, so we're showing board game play here, which is a pretty awesome thing that if you are looking for a non-sandbox environment to play, and you can take turns here. Now, if Dan's looking at my screen here, he can also see what I'm doing, but you
Yes.
could clearly beat me if that's the case, but it shows me where I want to deploy my troops, and you can click on the region. So let's just say I click on Rostov, and I confirm that. If you play in Chrome, you can actually get notifications real time when it's your turn. So if you're working throughout the day at home, like all of us are, and you want to play asynchronous, it actually can go pretty quickly, where it gives you opportunity to have a Chrome pop up when it's your turn, so you don't have to refresh the screen all the time. Matt would like a wooden round tracker with current art as a sticker. A wooden round tracker. Oh, you're talking about the crown piece.
Oh, yeah, that's the cardboard one.
Sticker. That's interesting. I usually don't like putting stickers on wood pieces, but that maybe it's just me.
I mean, you hot stamped Gearworks onto wood pieces,
which is crazy expensive.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Dice Odyssey. Thanks, Kaz. This game is amazing. I also really enjoyed that expansion. Thanks for your coverage. For those who did not watch it, you should check out the Dice Odyssey. Kaz, if you want to link it there, he had a great overview video of the expansion and talking about his thoughts on the game. I'm not really paying attention to where you placed your stuff.
I know. I'm a little worried that I'm going to not pay attention too, and then especially placing advisors, it's just going to go poorly, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is more to show how it works, though. So one thing you'll notice here is that on the board, there's certain, they'd be similar to Tabletopia, other places where there's snap points, but basically all your troops will gather together. So if I later put a second blue troop, it'll show up here. But you can see a full game log of what has happened, who did what, where. And then on the right-hand side, you can see your boat and the claim track, as this is hidden from other people. And it shows you a tally of what everybody has in their possession. But if I wanted to look more at what my opponent had and I click on their name, I can see what they have on their boat. But it'll tell me he has 3 coins, he has 3 of each of his buildings, he has these advisors left, he doesn't have any scheme cards or deed cards yet. Thanks, Kaz, for linking that. That's a good video for you to check out if you're not familiar with how the expansion works.
I'll send that turn back over to you. I placed an advisor, but you can kind of demonstrate. You click on a region and you can choose the advisor you want to play.
Yeah, so the fun thing, you go, haha, Dan, I want to bid more than you. I'm going to pay my number 4 advisor and confirm.
No.
And bump you down to make you waste your coin there. Waste is not the right word. You made me play my 4 there. So you can. This doesn't support solo mode. In fact, none of the digital implementations support solo mode, and there's some technical reasons for that. It's actually very difficult to do the sliding card 1 row at a time below a stack and then move that card to the top and then slide the next one. And Dan and I, we spent some time talking through how you could implement solo mode on Tabletopia, and you're going to end up seeing information that's going to spoil how you play the game in solo mode quite easily. Randy said, Dan, any cool engineering ideas up your sleeve in the future? It's a cool untapped area. People love buying things that no one else has.
Well, I mean, part of what I'm exploring when I'm doing game tray designs is not just working with publishers to do the designs and produce them. I'm looking at what about small batch 3D models that or 3D prints that then you vacuum form onto, and you could make individual, runs of 10 for a game, and kind of on demand, a little less expensive, that doesn't require a giant print run for these vacuum form trays. That's something that nobody's doing right now. I'm also not doing it right now, but it's something that may be someday happening. I don't know. Still, oh man, Kirk, you had to send something to me, or there's a text.
I put that there because these scroll windows with the comments are going away. I need to figure out later how to get the comments. Restream should pull all the comments together, but for some reason I did something wrong, and because they go away quickly, I wanted to make sure I didn't lose them. Stan had asked, what was the most complicated item to design from the Rurik inserts?
Surprisingly, the most complicated part was the holders for the miniatures. And the miniatures themselves are very, 50 million polygon triangle STLs, literally 50 million in some cases. They're, each individual file is 100 megabytes or more. When you put it into a piece of engineering software, they do not like that. So those really highly detailed miniatures are great for art, great for things like that. But when you get into an engineering software like SolidWorks, I use SolidWorks, they tend to try and render every triangle. And so they just kind of blow up, especially when you have 5, 6, 7 miniatures that you're all trying to put in at once. So during the development of these trays, I've had to expand into different pieces of software that then I have to bounce back into SolidWorks. So Blender is one that's a kind of it's an open source 3D rendering software, but I'm using it as a design software as well, because you can take those 50 million polygon things, which for a video game, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It will render it just fine. And then I do all kinds of modifications to get it to make a shape that's moldable and then expand it a little bit. And then then I take that shape and re-import it back into SolidWorks and use it as the little well for each individual leader. So surprisingly, that was unexpectedly difficult, integrating this highly detailed miniature into a piece of engineering software. But because of this, I know Blender really well. I mean, it's a very steep learning curve, but it's incredibly powerful. And so by working in it in a couple of years now, I'm, a lot of the tray renders that I built went on the last Kickstarter. The inside the box, that kind of the spread of all of the components, that was my render out of Blender.
Oh, yeah. Dan made that.
So it's been a learning opportunity as well as a difficult part of the tray design. Yeah. So
Dan made this sheet that gets a lot of high praise too. It's hard to credit everyone for everything they do in a game, but a lot of reviewers have said, I wish every publisher did this, and Dan did this. So thank you so much for doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Matt says, thanks, gents. Rurik is a modern classic. Got to get back to work. Good luck. Well, thank you so much for joining with us. And I do appreciate your thought on the wooden claim. What am I calling it? Wooden round marker.
Mm-hmm.
Gerald says, thanks for showing us board game play. I have Energy Empire that I've yet to get to the table, but maybe with the COVID situation, I can get my group to play that and Rurik. Yeah, it's a great site. And you can really, really stew over your actions when you're playing here. Whereas a lot of times when you play Rurik real time, you don't want to be that guy who's taking forever.
Mm-hmm.
But when you play online, you can take forever. So there was one time I was playing, and honestly, I was just determined that I was not going to lose because I was playing with people that they played me well in the first round, and I was in a hole, and I realized I needed to make a big play. So I was able to overthink it and came back to win. But if I was playing real time, I don't know if I would have been able to play as optimally to come back in that game. So you do have some slight differences in how to evaluate your performance when you play online. So anyways, we're done with the strategy phase here, and then Dan will get a chance to take a turn, which will look different. So showing you that how this works here. Yeah, so if you've been paying attention here on the side, there's no more advisors sitting here, which would show what is left for someone. This is highlighted with an arrow to show that Dan is taking his turn right now. He has the bear to show he's the first player. Now it shows that my username is highlighted because it's my turn. I get a chance to resolve my number one. I can either take the coin if I want to forfeit it, or I can take the corresponding action, which of course I'm taking that. I will choose one of the decks to draw from. Yeah, I'll take from this deck. Confirm, and I get a look at them, and Dan definitely is not seeing the three that I'm looking at right now. I will click on them to reorder them. No, I clicked on them wrong. Let's see. I need to look at them again. Choose one of the three. I want this one, and I will order them like that. All right. Confirm. So I got that. I can choose who's the first player. I'm gonna let Dan continue to be the first player. I like being able to outbid him. So each action you take, you confirm it. I could choose to play a scheme right now if I wanted to. I'm not going to. It tells you when you have bonus actions you can take. So if I had 2 goods that could be used for one of my converters, it would prompt me to say, do you want to use one? And I don't have goods, so I can't use a conversion token right now, so it doesn't give me that option. Dan does not have a scheme, so currently it will not tell him the option of taking a bonus action. Stan says, Kirk, how would you rate your knowledge on Kievan Rus history? Amateur, enthusiast, or expert? Oh, definitely not an expert. I'd say probably somewhere between an amateur and enthusiast. I've read enough to be dangerous, but when I get too far beyond the current history, and I couldn't call it current history, the history timeline within the game. So when you get closer to the Mongols coming and destroying them, for example, I don't have as much insight into that, but I have lots and lots of links. I've read lots of things. I've stared at lots of images. I have enough to be dangerous, but not crazy amounts of it. Good question. All right, playing a scheme here. I could play it beforehand if I want to. Dan, because I wasn't paying attention, you mustered 1 in Polotsk and 1 in Kiev. Trying to make that move.
I like how that there's a little running log of what, and it's actually very clear. I have not played this version. I might schedule my game group to play this version in this weekend. It's really nice.
Hey, I got a fish. Yeah, so I think this site excels when you choose to play it with people real time and create a private game. Not that it doesn't, but it ends up being something where I think about the game. So it's just me. It's a me problem. I play the game and I think about it in between my turns too much. So I've tried to play it during like breaks from work in the past, and I get distracted too much thinking about it. So I have to schedule time playing it live with someone, not asynchronous. But there are other people that works well for their schedule, and they can just, maybe they don't obsess over it like I do when I'm trying to do my work. So if it works for you, that's great. It's a really great site. And Stan, I should say that because I have your help and I have John's help and I have Yaroslav's help and other people that are familiar with the culture, I don't have to know everything about it, because if I do make a misstep, I do have help to know that I missed something, which is great, because it's not a history that I was super familiar with until I started digging into the game theme that Stan had initially come up with.
I forgot you had triple muster. Dang it.
So you moved into Novgorod, and I definitely not going to let you get away with that.
I know. I forgot you had the muster.
So I will muster 3.
I thought you were building and taxing.
So each region you click, by the way, you get to confirm it. It doesn't mean you're using all your muster, but then, let's see, you're still going to attack. You're going to try to attack me in there, unfortunately. Let's see, knowing what I have, which is kind of unfortunate that I didn't plan that better.
Nope.
I don't really want to have you exterminate me there. Let's see. I'll put another one there, as well as 1 in Rostov. And yeah, the timing is not quite right. I should have known that was coming, though. Oh well. I will finish my turn here. Let me check the YouTube comments here. Kind of fun to have a little thing we can do on this side while waiting for comments while showing this off too. If I win this, by the way, while you can see my screen occasionally, that'll be pretty awesome. I kind of don't think it'll happen though.
I was curious if it would do it. It did. So my special, obviously it did, but my special ability of Boris is stealing a coin and revealing less cards. But I did. So it did. It automatically gave me the coin.
The expansion will eventually be on here. There's no promises in anything. Keon is making not making a game. He's developing the online or digital implementation of another game for his site, and that's taking all his focus. And I didn't ask him for any special favors, not that I expected it. So there's no promises on when it will happen, but he's excited to do it at some point. And for now, we get to continue to enjoy the base game on here. All right. How did you kill all my guys there? I thought I had 3
I
there.
didn't.
Oh, you
I
moved
killed
out of
one.
there.
No,
Oh, you
I
lost
still
2
got, I
troops?
lost. Yeah, I lost one.
Okay.
I only had one in Boris.
Well, that's a bummer because I
Yeah,
can't build a church and take out your Boris, unfortunately.
no.
That's okay though. I can build.
You can convert a rebel.
Yes, I will. Go ahead and get my troops up a little bit more there as
Man,
well.
this implementation is great. I like that, when it gets a good, it automatically drops it on your boat. Does it allow you to pull those goods off your boat, like the sneaky ways to do it?
No, it doesn't.
That's the one problem with it.
We've talked about it. I mean, it's a loophole in the rules that by
It is.
design that people don't always know about. So if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, is you can gain 1, maybe 2 coins, depending on the game goes, to not put your goods on the boat in round 1 or round 2. So you get the bonus coin for not having your claim marker on the board for trade, while also still getting a full column of goods if you have 2 honey. So for example, if you get 2 honey and a fish, normally you would put those on your board and you would not get a coin for being on the claim board. But if you were to wait until round 2 or round 3 when you have 5 goods or more to put them on your boat, you can get the bonus coin for not having a claim marker on the track, as well as the bonus coin for the honey that you would get either way. All right, claim a deed card here. Let's see. I love these ones where you can go anywhere on the board. Flying troops. They're definitely real to the history of Kiev and Rus, being able to have your troops fly all over the board. Very thematic. No, you say you're sending them on a distant mission. It works thematically. It's just more fun to say that they're flying. So we're on to round 2 here. It goes pretty fast when you're playing online.
It does, and I'm not thinking through any of this, and I'm revealing my lack of skill.
Maybe on the next live stream, because we'll do a live stream also for the final day on Kickstarter, the final couple hours, I'll show Tabletop Simulator, because one thing you can do you can't do on Tabletopia is you can do a table flip. So if you're not familiar with it, you can literally flip all the pieces off the table, which is really funny to show.
How did you know I was currently looking for that option? I don't. I'm so bad at this.
We don't even have to play that much more of this either, too. But hopefully, people that are watching get a chance to
I'm curious
see how it works.
Oh, I forgot. I always forget to hit confirm, but in async, that probably doesn't matter that much. But
sure. So, second round is always important to get a jump on moving from one spot to another. You don't know where I'm going to move.
I don't.
So let's see. Other questions about Rurik. Stan says, what is your favorite Rurik module? Dan, you want to go first?
Ooh, my favorite Rurik module of the expansion, I assume he's talking about.
Yes.
I think I really like the Rebel expansion, or the Rebel module, giving the special powers to the rebels, because to me there's very little rules overhead for that, and I know that you've talked about in the past, at least with me, that the rebels are deliberately simplified in the base game. They're given just they're just roadblocks in the beginning. They're not a feature that you have to contend with. Whereas this expansion, to me, it feels like it really fleshes them out. It gives them a reason for existing more so than just being a roadblock. And so I think when I introduce this Rurik to people, normally I probably wouldn't introduce expansions with them, but I might introduce that the Rebel module right away, just because it feels a little more complete, but not that much more rules overhead.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's really that was the design focus, was to beef up the areas that had limited rules overhead to begin with, because they were areas that it wouldn't be too much work to think about them. And rebels were one of the first things Stan thought about. So if you're not familiar with them, here's an example. One of them, the Pagan Priestess, or that was her old name, the Pagan Unrest. And when you build a church, you can't convert a rebel until you defeat the Pagan Unrest, which requires having 2 churches and 2 defeated rebels, and you get a point for doing that. My favorite module, Stan, is Probably well, that's tough. I like both the warfare and the epic structures a lot. And it comes to both of these because I really like the opportunity to push my luck. And I like push your luck games. And I didn't think it would work necessarily in this game, but once we figured out how to make it work with the current warfare module of doing the capture, and you have this risk reward ratio of can I get more points from capturing you, but I do have an increased risk of casualty. It's a really tough decision at certain points in the game, but I love it. I love that part. And it's so simple. And I love being able to put the dungeon in the top of your tray. That was a complete stroke of good fortune that we were like, oh, this can fit perfectly into your tray. So then you got this 3D dungeon that you can pull your pieces out during the game and put the troops in there. It's just a really fun aesthetic and unexpected bonus to how we made the pieces for the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I do really like the epic structures. There's a couple in particular that I really love. I like the Vici, which allows you to gain additional scheme cards, as well as putting troops on there to score points at the end of the game. So if you're not familiar with all the new cards yet, which I don't expect everyone to be familiar with all the new cards yet, I'll put it up on my screen here. There's a couple of the cards in particular that really change the game if they come into play. And Vici gives a very different type of scoring condition that is not shown otherwise. So this Vici is once per round, you can move. When you move into the region, you can put a troop from your supply onto the card to draw a scheme card. So you're basically trading one troop for a scheme card, which is pretty cool. You get more hidden information. And then if you've done this the most times, you would get a victory point. I like that one a lot. I also really like, this was a really funny card to play with. Oh, whoops, I showed another stretch goal.
Oh no.
Easter egg, you can go pause the stream right there. I don't mind Easter eggs, especially near the end of the campaign here. Catacombs is a really brutal building to build. You can drop it down and no one else can build any structures in that region. That's a really, really funny card, and especially if you're concerned about other people coming in and converting you or building their stronghold there later. However, the other one that is super interesting that we just unlocked today, which I want to draw some attention to that, is the library. So if you haven't had a chance, and we'll send an update later today that talks about this in more detail, this is a really cool card that you can, this is an idea that I completely got from, what's the game called? It's the game about collecting books and organizing them within your rows, Ex Libris.
Ex Libris.
And there's a card in there, and I don't remember what it's called, that you can put a certain number of books on there. When you take the action, you can swap out yours. And I know other games have done things similar too, but that was the most recent example out of my mind. So this is fun that you get to put 3 deed cards on this. And then if you move your leader here, then you can swap one of your deeds with a deed on this card. And this actually allows you to even switch out, and you probably don't want to do this, but you could even switch out a completed deed that's worth 1 point for a deed on here that's worth 2 points. Now, in most cases, you probably have an uncompleted deed, and it's probably better to not get rid of a point you've already scored. But nonetheless, that is a fun little thing that is technically possible. You can't build this until you have accomplished a deed, so it comes out later in the game. We did that in part to keep the rules overhead minimal. So that way, if at the start of the game, the library is up with all these cards that can be acquired really quickly. You've got both the deed row and this, so there's 6 deeds to keep in mind. So this way, it doesn't come into effect until some point during round 2. So the extra introduction of other deeds that could be acquired comes later in the game, and it's more of a natural addition of information. All right, let's finish this round 2 here at least. Right now, if you look at the score, which you didn't show, I am currently
crushing me.
Well, I mean, you have the 3 points for warfare, so you had 3, 4 at this point, and I have 4, so we technically were tied. Time to move. You chose to move before I did, and you moved out of Novgorod. You're running away. Of course you would. And you built your church there to. Did you build that church last time?
Last round. Yeah.
Okay, but I can't move there and dominate your figure that way. Yes, but I can do this. I can
Yeah, you do have
move
him.
to here, confirm, and I have one more movement point to spend.
You have
which-
somebody way down in
Pearslavo, I want
yeah,
them.
personal.
I want them there.
Yeah, you want the control there.
But I would like to have. I think you are not attacking until late though, so I have
Right.
some time here. I will get one attack. Maybe I'll just leave this. I can cancel that region, go up here, move from Novgorod. You killed the troop there for me, thank you. I'll move to Polotsk. Confirm. I could spend my goods if I wanted to gain a build or a muster point. And that is tempting. So I will do that actually. I will use my converter here. I can select my goods that I want to use. I'll use both of the wood there. And I can confirm the build. I'll build here in Chernigov with my special ability. I can still build a church with a single, even though I don't rule because I am Mstislav and I can hit your guy. And now I'm going to rule that region.
Boom.
What worked? I've now shown how the more functionality works on the system too when you use your conversion tokens, which then flip.
Yeah. You got pretty much most of the things here.
What other questions do you all have? Or what do you think of board game play? Shout out to Keon.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool setup here.
I only rule one region. Well, I guess I'll just.
You really could have used a muster here, Dan.
There's a lot of issues with what I've done.
Let's see. Time to attack, and I'm going to attack your guy here. I got to choose a scheme deck. Ooh, which deck do I go for?
Which deck did I pull off of?
I have to look through history here and see.
Does it actually tell you left or right?
I think it does. So you attacked, casualty checked, deck 2. I mean, it's not a hidden information game from that perspective. I'm drawing from deck 2. Let's see. And the casualty check showed me no casualty. Boom.
No casualty.
Gerald says, I definitely like it over Tabletop Simulator. Now it just needs an AI. That's true. It is not an insignificant. So it is a fairly substantial amount of information to build that out. So I don't blame Cam for not having pursued that yet. He does it for fun on his side too. Like he is a developer for his day job, and then like a lot of us just likes doing certain projects on the side, and maybe down the road he'll implement it, but that would be pretty cool, but not yet. And this is a fairly large screen, but I've actually been able to play this successfully on my iPhone XR, where I can click and scroll around it. There is a certain pinch zoom where you get to a point where it kind of locks you out of accessing the household mat, in which case just refresh the screen. But if you get at the right zoom, you can actually move it around and play it perfectly fine on your phone too from board game play. And I don't think it was specifically designed to be mobile friendly. This is a rather large image, but it worked out really well with at least my phone. All right.
I just schemed.
I will build. Let's see. I have 1, 2, 3. I'm going to build here. Build a stronghold. Confirm, and I get one more building, which I'll build. I have to double up somewhere. Confirm that. So we're reaching the final weekend for the Stone and Blade campaign. We'll do another live stream, as I mentioned, on Wednesday. It ends at 1 p.m. Central, so I'll do a live stream into the finish of the campaign. I've never done that before. I've never done a live stream up until the end, and I'll invite another guest along for that. We'll have fun chatting about whatever is the campaign is ending. And maybe we'll show Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia.
Well, I had one successful attack with my one soldier, drawing 2 that I knew didn't have casualty cards, but
You had 2 attacks though, and you took out my leader.
I did.
Which shows me here that I need to get it back on the board.
Oh yeah, that's a good indication there.
All right, I probably should not have done what I did there with how I spent both my wood. I could have. All right, I'll confirm. Do 2 stone here, and then 1 tax point to get my fur.
Ooh, getting 2 coins that way.
Could I accomplish my deed here? I could, but I want to save it for later. All right, we don't have to keep playing it any further though, but
I don't have to keep losing.
But that's how it works on board game play. Now, one thing, and I forget how this works, if you're able to abort the game when it's done, there is a chance that it's just going to sit here for a little bit before it's going to time out. But there is a certain time when it will. I'm forgetting. I think we can even go in there. So if I go back to the main screen, it tells me my turn is here. I click on this handshake. I can go look at all the games you could play. If I go to the play button, I look at the games that I am actively playing. And there's a ... here, and I can request cancellation of the game. And if all players, did you click it too?
I did.
All right, so there we go. We cleared it out, so it won't give us any notifications about it there. Gerald says, well, you convinced me to back the Grand Prince Pledge. Oh, well, thanks so much for joining the campaign. Really appreciate that. Let's see. So we initially planned this to about 1:15-ish. Let's see if there's any more questions that people had. Otherwise, we'll probably wrap up in just a couple minutes here. Not super formal, but fun.
Yeah.
For those who didn't see the beginning, I had a couple of foibles getting up and going, and you probably received a notification on YouTube or Facebook that, hey, we're live early. Was able to pivot and make it work with a different option, though. Kudos to those who stream regularly, because I definitely had some struggles getting it up and going. Holden says, why is Stan Kordonsky the worst? That is a great question. Dan, you want to handle that one?
No, I think we should just take it to the chat and see what Stan has to say.
That's true. Stan, you can speak for yourself. Holden, I believe, lives in Milwaukee, or at least somewhere within striking distance, so that he gets to interact with Stan. Holden probably has the most deluxe edition of the Rurik base game that I've seen. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, par none. Holden, you should repost that in the Rurik group. I think you posted it in the Rurik group when there were only 400 members or so in the group, and now that it's a lot larger, people would love to see those pictures. He has real honey inside of glass vials for his honey resource. And then he has, I don't know if they're real fur, but it's some sort of textile that feels like fur that's adhered to. I think he may have just done it on the wood pieces for the bears. Fur. And then he replaced the other 3 resources with things that are from one of the Stonemeyer game chests. I don't remember which games they actually came from. At this point, Jamie made so many of those chests that they didn't even all apply to his games, but he upgraded the fish and the stone and the wood with other pieces from there. But the honey in particular is just ridiculous. And now, Dan, you could do that, though, because you do harvest your own honey.
We do have our own bees. Yes, that's true. And it's tempting. And I'll go into the manufacture of mini honeys for people for Rurik. I will not go into the manufacture of real fish components, though, because that would stink.
That would stink on multiple levels. Holden said it's official about him having the most legit copy of Rurik. So I guess that's a challenge, that if you own a copy of Rurik, or you will own one and you want to lay claim to the best copy in existence of Rurik, then I guess there could be a competition and we can vote on it in the Rurik group. That sounds like a reasonable thing. Stan says he'll take that question about why Stan is the worst. So I guess if we had the opportunity for a guest caller, that would work well, but I guess you'll have to defend yourself another time.
Holden
says that the hair on the fur pieces is made out of Stan's back hair.
Oh. good image. So I'm assuming, Holden, that your minis are painted too, right? I mean,
Holden, did you get your minis painted? Because if not, I may have to retract that and say, because several other people have really awesome painted minis. Justin, I'm blanking on his last name, Justin Long in the UK. He's posted some of his minis he painted in the Rurik group. All right, I got to just pull these up here because
there's some
for
impressive
people
stuff.
that are not familiar with what's gone on before, some people have made really, really awesome versions of their copy of Rurik. So if I go here and just search for these posts, I can show them. That'll probably work. There is quite a bit of history in this group. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen yet, so that doesn't help anyone. One moment, please. Here we go. So if I go in here and I look for things that Holden goes, so here's Holden. He put fur on the bear tokens, which looks pretty epic. I definitely don't have any bear tokens that are like that. Holden says that he will have Stan's daughter paint his pieces. She'll do a better job than he. Well, all right. So you've got half of the most deluxe copy in existence. You just need to get the painted miniatures because now I got to find I got to find these honey things. And Dan, you should consider selling something like this on Etsy. Let's see, where is Holden's? If I can find it. Here we go. All right. Oh, he also upgraded his bear for the starting marker, which I think our bear for the starting marker is pretty cool. That's a pretty legit bear. And I'm not sure where these wood boxes are from some other game, but these are real little vials with cork tops for the honey that goes inside of them. And hopefully none of them leaked on your copy, by the way. But now I got to pull up Justin's miniatures because these are epic. And now other people have done a really good job in painting too. And I'm not saying, I'm just highlighting one that comes to mind, for example. So here is his Boris. And I thought he did a really, really nice job of it. And he shared some of the other ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for tuning in here today. Any last questions before we jump off and get back to our Friday afternoons?
Mm-hmm.
Let me check on YouTube, check on Facebook. Thanks for joining the chat today, Stan. Quite fun. And I won't hold that against you for not winning through 2 rounds in the board game play implementation of the game.
Well, it was my pleasure to try and throw an opponent at you.
Yeah, well, maybe your game group likes it and goes for it. And for those of you who are interested in the plastic trays, stay tuned for more information as we reveal that in upcoming stretch goals. And here's to a great finish on the campaign. Thanks for all your help with both playtesting and making trays and other graphics. There are some digital render items Dan has done as well that just lots of behind the scenes help. Really appreciate it.
That's why I'm a consultant.
Alrighty.